Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be with you today. My late mother had a good friend who often said that God's paths are crooked. And indeed, my crooked path has taken me to this church before. Not only am I from the same hometown as Pastor Carly, and I do indeed remember her parents fondly, I will tell you that your pastor is very much like her mother, Jan. And Jan was just this vibrant spirit. And she always had pet names for people. For the remaining years of my life, when I would see Jan Kuntz, she only had one name for me, and it was Bright Eyes. I don't know if she even ever called me by my real name. I was only Bright Eyes. But what's so interesting is that I have been in this church before. My late father, Chuck Nadel, was from Two Rivers. And my mother's family moved here in later years for her father to work for Paragon. And so when it was time for me as an only child to go into kindergarten, my dad traveled extensively because of his work. And so my mother and I spent the first semester of my kindergarten year with my going to the McKinley School back in the day when that was an elementary school. And my mother and I went to church here, if you can imagine, 55 years since I've last been in this building. But I remembered it. I remembered this beautiful sanctuary. You are blessed here. So it is a joy to be with you. If you need a planner, I'm here for you. I love to think ahead, strategize, organize, set goals, set my sights forward, and plan for everything. Or so I would think. If you need a worrier, I'm here again. I sadly dedicate more hours than I would care to admit, especially those deep, dark hours in the middle of the night, to such fruitless efforts as fears, worries, what-ifs, and shoulda-dones. If you need a rememberer, and yes, I made up that word, but go ahead and use it. It's not trademarked or anything. If you need a rememberer, I am here again. I am ashamed to admit that I hang on to hurts, grudges, losses, griefs, failed attempts, and disappointments. On the more positive side, however, of being a rememberer, I like to reminisce. But I can get caught up in the past, choosing to see it only through rose-colored glasses. Planning, worrying, remembering, and reminiscing are all admittedly a part of who I am. But when I put too much of my energy to those things, I rob myself of something vital, this very moment. And I rob myself of the joy found in the uniqueness, the preciousness of this very moment. My late mother didn't give in to much worry or fear, and I rarely ever heard her speak of lost hours of sleep. My mom was a woman of faith and hope, and she lived her life with joy and gratitude for every single day that was given to her. My mom used to remind me over and over again, and sadly, I needed to be reminded over and over again of her favorite passage from the Psalms. This is the day which the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. As the book of Philippians instructs us, do not worry about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. That is what my mom would do, and that's what I have been learning to do. Prayer is far more powerful than worry, and I dare say it is a much more positive, hopeful, and productive use of my energies. As the English proverb goes, worrying is like sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. By letting go of worry, even when things feel like they're a little bit rocky. We can make room for joy and gratitude to come into our lives. And that joy and gratitude can permeate our lives, even when things are uncertain, even when they are rocky, even when they are downright unpleasant. Even if worry and fear seem to be reduced in our lives or miraculously appear to be absent from our lives, joy can still be elusive. Philosophers, writers, and people from all walks of life and all over the globe have had joy and the pursuit of it on their minds for centuries and centuries and centuries, and they still do today. Take, for instance, William James, the American psychologist and philosopher of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, who wrote, "To miss the joy is to miss all." To miss the joy is to miss all. Fast forward to the current day, and to Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Vietnamese monk and peace activist, who wrote, "We may think of joy as something that happens spontaneously, but joy needs to be cultivated and practiced in order to grow." He goes on to say that we can cultivate peace and joy in ourselves, which we can then offer to those around us. As human beings with our multitude of strengths and weaknesses, I believe we benefit from being reminded to seek and embrace joy. There's an entire trend on Twitter right now around the hashtag JoyTrain, T-R-A-I-N, JoyTrain, where all of the tweets that bear that hashtag all have to do with joy. For whatever reason, they particularly populate on Tuesdays. So if you're on Twitter and it's Tuesday, check out the hashtag JoyTrain, and you will receive at the very least a little infusion of joy, and much more likely an avalanche of joyful messages. You know, social media has been in the news a lot lately. Some of it is pro, most of it has been con. I believe that social media can provide a powerfully positive forum for sharing wisdom. My friend Dr. Ellen Albertson, who is a Vermont-based psychologist, registered dietitian, and Reiki master, is one of those people who tweets wisdom. She tweeted this: "Let go of all your cares and worries and enjoy the joy of being." The joy of being. Gladys Tabor was my mother's favorite author, and she's one of mine as well. Gladys Tabor wrote of gentle times, moments in nature worth reflecting upon, the joy of friendships and of raising cocker spaniels, and lovely times at her farm in Connecticut, which she called Still Meadow. Gladys Tabor wrote of the joy of being. In her book, Still Meadow Seasons, Gladys Tabor wrote this: "It is good for us, I think, to keep as much joy in life as we can. We busy ourselves with so many things that are not of the heart and spirit. We worry about money. We agonize over the terrible state of the world. We fret at household duties or business minutiae. We work, we argue, we squander our strength in a million ways. And all the time, the wonder of life is around us. The ecstasy of breathing air ravished by apple blossoms, of walking on fern-cool driftways, of listening to young leaves moving in the moonlight, and of seeing the twilight stars in the violet bowl of the sky." Gladys Tabor ends this eloquent, beautiful passage with these hopeful, joyful words about spring. "There is joy enough in one spring day to furnish forth the world, if we but knew it." In my own attempt to capture the style and embrace the philosophy of the late Gladys Tabor, I began writing a blog in the fall of 2011, 1 month after my mom passed away. I named the blog Time to Be, which is a phrase taken from the writings of Gladys Tabor. We need time to dream, time to remember, and time to reach the infinite. Time to be. Yes, time to be. We all need it. We all owe it to ourselves. When we give ourselves time to be, we can refill our tired spirits and our depleted wells of energy. When we give ourselves time to be, we can reframe our thinking and gain a new perspective. You would think that by now I would be somewhat of a so-called expert in living in the moment with joy and being grateful for every single thing. But alas, this human is a fragile, frail being whose memories for the important things can be turned on and off like a light switch. You see, I've had some 14 surgeries in my lifetime. Since age 29, my life has been punctuated by one life-threatening or life-altering illness after another, including 3 cancer diagnoses, 2 breast cancers and a melanoma, and 3 benign tumors, 1 in my brain and the other 2 in my upper thoracic spine.